a start with a bill that has been put in the Lok Sabha that has sought to put a limit to the number of guests to be invited, to the expenses that run in for a particular wedding, dishes to be served, and to check the show of wealth, whether or not it is ugly show of wealth, far too extravagant. Also wants those spending above 5 lakh rupees to contribute towards marriages of the poor girls. And what this effectively means is that if a family spends above 5 lakh rupees, which anyway to begin with is a very conservative amount for wedding these days, but if you're spending above 5 lakh rupees on a wedding in your family, it will have to contribute 10% of the amount on marriages of girls from poor families. So this would be essentially meaning doing charity for the poor, for the girls belonging to poor families. Now this bill, which also seeks a special welfare fund, which is to be created by the states for this very purpose. It's going to be implemented all across the country. It has to get in that nod from the states as well. The Marriages Compulsory Registration and Prevention of Wasteful Expenditure Bill, this is what it's called, the year 2016, has been introduced by Congress MP Ranjeet Ranjan, is likely to be taken up as a private member's bill in the upcoming Lok Sabha session, which starts next month in March.
खाना बर्बाद होता है, फिजूल खर्ची होती है, जेवर गहने का पूरा आभूषण का प्रदर्शन होता है और जिस चीज से आम आदमी का शोषण होता है, कॉमन मैन फिर उसको दूसरों आदमी को देख करके, बड़े पूंजीपतियों को देख करके, पैसे वालों को देख करके उस ओर बढ़ना चाहता है.
There should be curb on the lifestyles of the capitalists, political leaders and bureaucrats. And there should be some limit of the expenditure in the marriage also. And prominently the political leaders, ministers, chief ministers, prime ministers, MPs, they must not visit these kinds of marriages which are supposed to be cost-based one. Shashikala and Jayalalitha, they both are the victim of this kind of wasteful expenditure in the marriage.
Let's get in further updates here. We have with us our news editor Meghna Dekha on the nature of reactions that we would be getting from those industries that perhaps are affected, that are part integrally associated with weddings across the country. Meghna, are people looking at this as forced charity, or does this come in as a refreshing change to be really looking out, seeking help, in fact giving help to the poor of the country?
Well, it is a very interesting concept, Seher, to think that there are going to be no more big fat Indian weddings. We've seen the amounts which are being spent. Some would say 100 crore wedding, which the Reddy, apparently, Janardhan Reddy had kept for his daughter, of course. But the big problem is, how are we going to really imply something like this? If this were indeed to turn into an act, then we'll have to try and figure out how is the government going to keep tracks on who exactly is spending how much on the money. So that itself needs to be looked into. In addition to that, let's not forget, Sarah, some of the legislators are the ones who have been carrying out and throwing these lavish weddings themselves for their daughters, for their nephews. We've seen in the case of Sasikala's nephew, we've seen in the case of Janardhan Reddy, there are several such instances which come immediately to mind, where it is the legislators who are the ones who've been spending the maximum amount. So is it going to be possible for this Congress MP to ensure that this bill actually gets passed by all the legislators with a majority in both houses of the parliament? Well, that too is going to be one of the stumbling blocks. However, in effect, it is a very interesting bill that let's try and curb the amount of expenditures that Indians have a tendency of splurging in a wedding, and use that money constructively, use that money for charity, use that money for someone who is struggling to get married, doesn't have the funds to get married. So yes, it is going to get 100% support when it comes to the entire morale behind this bill. However, when it comes to implications, it is, let's not forget, something which is going to affect drastically at that the entire paraphernalia of a wedding industry which comes along with it. There are so many industries which are going to be directly hit by it as well. So all of that needs to be kept in mind as well.
Meghna, what about the bar that has been set, the limits that has been set of 5 lakh rupees? Many would think even for just middle class families, this is a rather conservative amount to set the limit at 5 lakh rupees.
Well, yes, there are already voices which are coming in that 5 lakh rupees is ridiculously low. Even someone from a middle class family is likely to spend. After all, Indians have this tendency that they store their money, their wealth, they store gold, jewelry all through their lives just in order to get their daughters and their sons married off in the way that they've always envisioned. So, of course, it will also have to come in with a complete mindset change of the society where you feel it's fine to perhaps go into a courtroom, get married and have a small dinner. That's something that Indians are not used to. So the entire social mental fabric also needs to be changed. The mindset needs to be changed in addition to that. But you're absolutely right. 5 lakh rupees when it comes to an Indian wedding, even someone from the middle class would be spending that much. There are voices coming in that perhaps that limit itself ought to be higher and should at least go up to much higher, a couple of times higher at the minimum.
That's right, Meghna. And the first point that you raised here on how does one prove or even show evidence for having spent the nature of money, even if it's more than 5 lakh rupees. Let's also pull in our senior correspondent, Paulami Saha, for this, for more on that. Paulami, as far as the limit goes of 5 lakh rupees, but more importantly, how does one show that more than 5 lakh has been spent? Because the wedding market being largely cash driven, this again is going to be very dependent on making the entire market digital, on making transactions digital for weddings.
Absolutely. There will be a lot that will go into, actually making this effective, if at all this private members bill is admitted into the Lok Sabha during the second half of the budget session of Parliament, which convenes on March 9th. This is a private members bill that she seeks to introduce, of course, Congress MP Ranjeet Ranjan. But if is she going to be successful with it? Will she get that kind of unanimous support from across both houses? That remains to be seen, because there are various contentious issues involved in actually making this possible and effective as well, and in the implementation of the same as well. She's cited certain points where she thinks that you can possibly try and put a curb on the kind of extravagance that Indian weddings are all about most of the time. She's tried to set a limit, suggested a limit on the number of guests, a limit on the number of dishes that are served at these weddings as well. She suggested that if you're spending about 5 lakh rupees, then 10% of the excess amount that you spend needs to go towards a welfare fund of sorts, which will then be used towards, the marriage of daughters in poor families, those living below poverty line. And in order to ensure that all of this is sort of within the net of the law itself, she suggested, of course, the amount needs to, like you said, how do we know how much was spent? But in order to know that nobody is circumventing the law, if this were to, in fact, become law, is that you register your marriage within 16 days of the solemnization of the marriage itself. So then you know that there has been a wedding in a particular family, and then you go about trying to, compute the expenses.
All right. We're taking in our viewers' reactions on this as well. Our viewers have been calling on this. Our first caller, Ms. Indira Kundu from Noida. Please go ahead. We seem to have lost that line. Next being Captain Ajay Pillai from Chennai. Please go ahead, sir.
Yes, good afternoon. I find the whole thing ridiculous because, like you said, the netas keep spending on various other aspects of life.
Okay.
But other than that, most even lower class families, as economics decides, spend more than 5 lakhs on their wedding.
All right. So you're saying the limit far too less, 5 lakh rupees perhaps is a very, very in fact, conservative expenditure that could be for any given wedding. Let's bring in Ms. Shaina NC of the BJP with us on the phone line. Appreciate you being with us, Shaina. Would you take this positively? Okay, we'll reconnect with Shaina on that in just a bit. But what we're discussing here is a wedding cap bill, so to say, to avoid extravagant spending in weddings, to put a cap on that. 5 lakh rupees, if you're spending beyond 5 lakh rupees for a wedding in your family, you will have to contribute a certain percentage of the amount for the welfare of the wedding of girls in poor families. We're taking in viewers here calling in as well. Zidi Khan from Bilaspur, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I wanted to tell you that we have made a government which is for the government, which is for the people, by the people, and of the people. Now the government is trying to actually control our destiny. How much money I should spend on my marriage It is my wish. Okay, and the amount of money that I am spending ultimately is going into the circulation, into the economy of the country. So actually money is not being wasted. It is full.
All right, Mr. Khan, you of course stating that it is your prerogative to decide how much to be spent at a wedding in your family, not for the government. Thanks for calling in. Dheeraj Milwani from Hyderabad, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Dheeraj here from Hyderabad.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I find this bill is really ridiculous because, for example, if a person is earning money and they are paying taxes, I think it depends on them on how much they want to spend. It's their hard-earned money. So I think the government cannot dictate how one should spend their legal money on anything, be it marriage, be it honeymoon. It's something the government cannot dictate.
All right, it's something that the government should not ideally put a cap on. Many, of course, saying 5 lakh rupees being the upper limit, far too less. Because 5 lakh in itself is a very conservative expenditure for several families there in weddings. But as far as extravagant spendings go in weddings, mostly of course seen either not wanting to make a blanket statement here, but what has been seen in the past is either of course of industrialists and essentially politicians' relatives in what some of our viewers have pointed out here as well. Let's in fact take a listen in to the Congress MP Ranjeet Ranjan, who's in fact introduced this as a private member's bill in the Lok Sabha.
देखिए, इस बिल में दो अहम बातें हैं. एक जो हमारे इंडिया में जो शादियां होती हैं फैट डिक्स पार्टी कहते हैं और बहुत ज़्यादा दिखावा होता है. उससे क्या होता है, एक तो सिर्फ सजावट में बहुत पैसे खर्च होते हैं, लोगों को दिखाने में पैसे खर्च होते हैं. अननेसेसरी 200 लोगों से शादी हो सकती है तो 1000, 2000, 3000 लोग आते हैं. और दूसरा, फूड की वेस्टेज बहुत होती है, खाने की वेस्टेज बहुत होती है. हम लोगों को मालूम ही नहीं होता, शादी करने जो लड़की की शादी कर रहा है उसके रिलेटिव को भी नहीं मालूम होता कि इतनी सारी वैरायटियां थी, सिर्फ दिखाने के लिए वैरायटियां रखी जाती है. तो मुझे लगता है कि आज की तारीख में वो वक्त आ गया है कि हम लोग इस पे अंकुश लगाएं. एक, कितना फूड होना चाहिए, एक मीठा है रख लो, एक नमकीन रख लो, और दूसरा इतनी जो साजो सज्जा और जो इतना तामझाम होता है, निश्चित तौर से उस पर लगाम लगनी चाहिए. जिसके लिए ही मैंने बोला कि 5 लाख आप कर दो, 5 लाख वो कर दे. अगर इससे ज्यादा आपका बहुत मन कर रहा है, बहुत ज्यादा खिलाने का मन कर रहा है, तो गरीबों की बेटी की शादी के लिए 10% आप एक कोष बनाकर उसमें दे दें.
Our next caller, Madhu Ranganathan from Kadalur, Tamil Nadu. Please go ahead.
I can't understand why this crazy idea of having to control everything citizen of India today. Who is the government to do that? We have the
right. Let me at this given point of time also clarify to our viewers. This is a private member's bill introduced by a Congress MP in the Lok Sabha. It would be taken up for discussion in the next session. Has nothing to do with the government for now, but it could be discussed further in the next Lok Sabha session and made into a law. That's when you can say that the government has stepped in. For the moment, it remains a private member's bill introduced by a Congress MP. Our next caller, Anurag Singh from Chennai.
Yes, hi. I'm just actually very confused whether we opted for this government on the basis of development or personal invasion. How can they dictate these terms like I'm supposed to spend this much on my personal affairs? I mean, it's up to me. I mean, even before they provide basic amenities like roads and, toilets to the public, they're dictating terms of my own personal life.
All right, thanks for calling in. We are essentially getting a sense of what's the reaction going to be, if at all, this bill is passed in the Lok Sabha and made into law, signed into law there. For the minute, of course, it is a bill which has been introduced as a private member's bill to be discussed and taken up further in the next Lok Sabha session in March. Our correspondent, Paulami Saha, of course, has been getting us further details on this. Paulami, we're already getting a sense here of people not taking too kindly to this idea. One, of course, being the cap, and one, of course, being the forced charity. Many not been talking about in wanting to call it a forced charity, but largely unhappy with the upper limit there of just 5 lakh rupees.
largely unhappy with the upper limit of 5 lakh rupees and just the idea that, anyone is trying to curb what I do in my personal life. That is the sense that you're getting on the ground as well as to if I have the wealth, if I have the money, if I have got it through, in a transparent and a fair manner, if I've earned it for myself, if I'm giving my taxes, if everything is, on the books really, then who is the government or any, for that matter, of course, now it is a private member's bill, but the fact is, who is anybody to legislate as to how exactly should I be spending that money? If I should be spending that on cars, if I should be building myself a palatial bungalow, if I want to give my son or my daughter a lavish wedding, the authorities shouldn't be checking on that. They should possibly be checking the idea. There's a sentiment, that people on the ground feel that you're trying to go after the rich just because they're possibly rich. You, of course, go after them if there is information about their wealth having been ill-gotten.
That's
you
right.
check
There's
whether they're paying
information
their
of them having
taxes,
not
whether
paid
they're
their
hiding
taxes
their
as well.
sources of income.
Appreciate that point there. Paulamy, please stay with us. More of our callers calling in. Vijay Suri from Gurugram. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I personally feel that the government should be restricting people spending money, because there are a lot of poor people who go into debt because of these weddings, and there are a lot of people who do a lot of frivolous expenses. Obviously, yes, I do feel that the government should make people more aware rather than making laws. There should be more awareness to be given to people to say that, look, you shouldn't spend so much of money, rather than putting
All
down
right, so
a law
Mr. Suri
and
saying at the
do.
most there could be just a polite reminder from the government, of course, not to spend so much. Instead, would be nice to give away a portion in charity as well. Thank you for calling in, sir. Ramanamurthy from Hyderabad. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate this effort by the private member bill, and I appreciate the government also, because this creates some kind of social awareness, consciousness among the poor people or rich people. There is a huge divide actually in the society now. The rich people are showing it off like anything, and the poor people are also sometimes forced to follow this, and they are becoming paupers. So this really helps.
Okay, that being a fresh perspective, appreciate you adding in that fresh perspective that it does at the end of the day create awareness that there are people in our society amongst us who cannot afford similar such weddings. They would like to have similar such weddings, and what's the harm really in contributing and giving away a certain percentage in charity? So it does effectively create awareness. Thanks for calling in on that front. Paulamy, with further inputs here. Paulamy, given the fact that, of course, a long way for this to go till it's signed into law is just a private member's bill given out by a Congress MP here. But what really have been the other political reactions? Just for the record on board, understandably, a lot of politicians could perhaps support this.
Well, obviously, this is, the kind of callers that are calling in Seher and expressing differing views. This has obviously got a lot of mixed reactions as well from a lot of people across the political spectrum as well. Obviously, they cannot come out and state their position on record because, for instance, a BJP MP wouldn't do that until, there is obviously a sort of, a framed response around this. This is a private member's bill by a Congress member of parliament, of course, and it is pending discussion in the Lok Sabha. But, of course, it has a mixed sort of reaction, there is that set of reaction which says what I do with my income and my wealth and my money is up to me. But yes, there is the sort of purpose at which this entire private members bill is hinted at, to sort of curtail extravagance, to sort of curtail this, unnecessary splurging on weddings in India. The intent behind it and the sentiment behind it is definitely well placed, for sure. There have been extravagant weddings. We know the 500 crore wedding of the ready daughter, and we know the kind of reactions it got from across the country as to what exactly does this mean? Why is so much money being spent really on a wedding which could have been a well-off wedding without that kind of lavish expenditure as well? So, yes, it's getting a lot of mixed reactions as well. Congress, of course, also sort of muted in their response to this private members bill, because, again, they're saying that this is Ranjeet Ranjan's own perspective, and she's, of course, approached it with the intent that, the extravagance
All right, two of our callers on this. Indira Kundu from Noida. Indira Kundu from Noida, please go ahead.
Hello?
Yes?
Are you there?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I don't think you have to have a limit on the marriage or the wedding, because after you pay your taxes, if it is not a black money, there is no problem. If it is
All right.
black money,
Well pointed out that if you're paying your taxes, that of course, if at all you are paying your taxes, in all honesty, not spending on weddings in black money, but it is white money, there should be no cap on that. Thanks for calling in. Mrs. Niranjana from Hyderabad, please go ahead.
Yeah, this wedding within 5 lakh rupees is possible because if a person takes a perform marriage in registered offices legally by paying legal fees and holding a dinner party or lunch party by calling the few selected persons from both the sides.
Right.
And then it is up to them, up to the people, parties involved, how much to spend on the jewelry and the clothing. If that can be avoided, well and good. It is possible.
Right. Ms. Niranjana, appreciate you putting that point across there, saying that no need to crib about the upper limit of 5 lakh rupees. It is very much possible. Spendings can be conservative. At the most, can have one lavish lunch or one lavish dinner. Instead of a string of celebrations lasting one week to 10 days, that is mostly seen in weddings. Our next caller, G.D. Mehta from Delhi.
Hello.
Let's go ahead.
Hello, yes.
Yes.
Actually, I don't think the government is going for that, because it will again decrease the employment opportunities for small vendors like flower decorators, halwais, vendors, music people, dholwalas, tailors, etc., etc. And again, there will be shortage of the depletion of the employment opportunities. This is my view.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for calling in. A string of callers, of course, so far as our viewers who've called in, saying many maintaining that at one level it is possible to keep the expenditure with a cap of 5 lakh rupees. But just to clarify here, this isn't the government yet. This is a recommendation that has been put forth by a Congress MP in the form of a private member's bill. It is to be discussed in the next session of the Lok Sabha starting March, which would be the next session. A long way for it to go, of course, to be signed into a law. It is still a bill under the private member's bill. It is an idea, essentially, that has been floated here by the Congress MP in the form of a private member's bill. In seeking charity, saying that it is important, many, of course, have maintained that this is imperative duty at one level. If you have enough to spend on yourself, why not contribute a certain percentage to charity as well? Whether or not 5 lakh rupees is a relevant cap that needs to be maintained, of course, would further be thrashed out there once this is discussed in the Lok Sabha. But largely what one has seen in the several years, the nature of extravagant expenditure, close to 100 crore rupees or 300 crore rupees that we've seen, are mostly of politicians and industrialists. Many thanks to our correspondent for those updates and all our viewers calling in. We're quickly switching